This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and we're talking today with Kristin Pursley, and she is the Vice President of the Adult School Teachers United in West Contra Costa School District. And she and her president, Ken Ryan, were recently fired by the school district, and they have been able to get their jobs back. But the struggle that they've been engaged in is important to look at. So welcome to our show, Kristin.
Thank you.
So Kristin, why don't you talk about what recently happened about the firing and what that means?
Kind of came out of the blue, like on Wednesday, last week, June 8th, we were in a meeting. We were working on the schedule for next year for the English as a Second Language program, where we both work as lead teachers. And Ken looked at his email and he said, "Oh my gosh, I just got fired," or "I just lost my job," or something to that effect. And I thought immediately, I better check my email and see if they didn't do the same thing to me. And they did. And the letter they sent us was very, very legally worded. It was something like, it was mostly like them citing some law that they thought meant that we were temporary employees and that they could just let us go. They didn't, in their words, it wasn't a firing, it was a release. You are released from your duties. After I've been working there 25 years and Ken has been working there 28 years, and they wanted to treat it as if we come on to work for a couple of weeks and they were just going to release us. So that's kind of how it started.
And what do you think is behind this? Because to target the president or vice president of your local means that they don't like what your union is doing, apparently.
Yeah, I think the tone of our relationship with the district has really changed in the last, I'd say, year. Of course, there was always some conflict, but we're actually a fairly recently recognized union. We were recognized in 2017. And since 2018, we've been trying to negotiate our first contract. And of course, being a first contract, it is taking some time, and we expected it would take time, but now it's really gone over the line. It's been more than 4 years, and we were making quite a bit of progress. And all of a sudden this year, there's been constant delays of the district just bringing up issue after issue that they want to renegotiate after we had negotiated, we had agreed and negotiated an agreement on a lot, and they just keep bringing up things. And one thing they did, a major thing, was they challenged the composition of our bargaining unit, which was agreed on in 2017. And one of the things that they have alleged, because we have teachers, we're an adult school, so of course we have a big night program. And we have teachers who work for West Contra Costa Unified with the kids during the day and work as adult school teachers at night. And they were saying, oh, well, they can't be in two unions, but we represent them as adult school teachers, and United Teachers of Richmond really does not represent them as adult school teachers. They're on a different pay scale when they work for the adult school. Any issues that they have, without us, they wouldn't have representation. So that's one of the major things that they did. And they also questioned our ability to represent some of our other members. So that caused a big delay. I think another thing that may have influenced it was COVID. COVID seems to have kind of put the district in a very oppositional relationship to the teachers. It's kind of like they have to command and control everything, order everybody back into the classroom, and be very, they don't want to do MOUs anymore with anybody. Like when we ask for MOUs, they're like, oh no, we don't want to do MOUs. Let's just, we'll give you some language and you approve it.
An MOU is what?
Oh, a memorandum of understanding.
I see.
And we had several memoranda of understanding at the first year of the pandemic when we were shut down. They were very careful, to have worked out agreements with us about, what was going to be fair. And then as soon as they wanted to go back in person, there was this kind of, they really wanted to just be able to tell everybody what to do. And they've been very, very oppositional to the unions, I would say. And I can't say for sure where it's all coming from, but
And the adult school program is critical, particularly in California, with large number of immigrants who come to this country and want to improve their proficiency, learn English so they can contribute to their families, to contribute to the community. How is the program under attack? And it seems like that's something that California, with a $97 billion surplus, would want to beef up and put more money into adult education as a whole.
That is a very good question. And adult education has been kind of on the ropes since 2008. There was at that, so, when we went into that big financial crisis in 2008, the state actually suspended all the laws that had to do with adult education. So a lot of protections that students had where they couldn't charge students for certain classes, like English as a second language, that had to be free. It was a free-for-all, and districts started charging, and then that kind of stopped in 2013. But the main thing was that we had our own funding that was protected. It was called categorical funding. In 2008, the state basically did away with most categorical funding, including adult school funding, and told the districts, we know we're hurting you, we're making you, cut your programs by your budget by 20%. In order to help, we're going to let you take money out of these categorical programs that you can't touch before. And so for adult ed, that was pretty devastating because some districts took all the money, and there's no more adult school in those places, like Albany, California, which is kind of a over the border from us. They used to have a pretty big adult school program. They have no adult school. Oakland, rather famously, really devastated. Oakland had a very large adult school program, huge ESL program serving thousands of students. Now they have about 10 ESL classes. And that all happened around 2013 or so, when the state reorganized adult education. And they've never really restored our funding. In 2013, they basically said, okay, districts, you can't take this money anymore. And some of the districts were really angry about that. They were hoping to take more money from their adult schools. And then we were put into this thing called a consortium with the community colleges. And a lot of it, well, and funding was to come to us through the community colleges now, or through this consortium. And it was based on whatever funding we had in 2013, which was very reduced because districts had been, if they hadn't taken all the money right away, they've been taking a little bit from 2008 to 2013. And the districts like ours that are in more low-income areas, where actually adult ed is probably more needed, we actually were the ones who were left with the least resources because our districts needed the money and they've been taking it. And then places that were in a little better shape, where maybe the district didn't need as much of the adult schools money, they are in better shape as adult schools now. And there was no action ever taken to correct that. They just left Oakland, Richmond, I'm sure big parts of LA with very inadequate funding, places with a little better funding, like maybe Berkeley. I mean, Berkeley was hurt too, but it was not as badly as us, because their district is better funded. You know, they're in a more wealthy area.
And San Francisco Community College, which has done a large amount of adult education, is being butchered. They're laying off ESL teachers. They say they don't have any money, and yet they have 80 billionaires. They have a surplus of money in the city and county of San Francisco, and yet they're basically butchering older adults program. You know, in the midst of the greatest wealth in history of California, they are attacking public education, attacking immigrants and their right to an education. What does this mean to your program and working people, adults who use your program?
Well, one thing that's happening for us is our ESL program is being just chipped away at. Like 2019, 2020, they had to keep the same amount of funding for all programs during the shutdown. But as soon as the shutdown was over and the state mandate was gone, they started to reduce, sometimes just some by a little bit, the program. And this year they're actually cutting about 4 classes from last year. And what that means is, of course, the amount of classes for ESL students is less, and who knows where that's going to stop. You know, do they? And I really don't understand it in our area where we have a very large immigrant population. Something like 1/3 of the kids in the district are English language learners, and that means there's even more adults who are English language learners, and the parents of those kids and the families of those kids almost certainly need to learn English, and it helps the kids when the parents learn English. So you would really think the district would care about it, but the district isn't really in charge anymore of how much money the adult school gets. That now is the consortia and the state. And the state, you know, they give us like a teeny little COLA every year after we've been cut by half. So yeah, I mean, especially as an adult school teacher and looking at this big state surplus and knowing that they're not even going to look at giving any of it to adult education, to adult schools, because they never do. There's never an increase in our budget more than, you know, we maybe get the same COLA that K-12 is getting. And the community colleges get huge amounts of funding. So, you know, I didn't used to feel like resentful about the community colleges, but now I do, because they're getting what they want and we never get anything. We never get restored.
Well, in San Francisco, the Board of Trustees and the administration, San Francisco Community College, got extra money for the COLA, and they're refusing to use it for the COLA for the faculty. In fact, they're going to use money from the COLA funding to hire a lawyer to fight the union.
Oh,
so I mean, this is another union busting attack. Now, I mean, we have Tony Thurmond, who's the state superintendent of public instruction. He lives in Richmond. What has he done about this issue of adult education? And the Democrats have a supermajority in the legislature. They have this massive budget surplus. Have you reached out to them about funding for adult education? And where's Tony Thurmond on all this?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that not just Mr. Thurmond, but our legislators, they're really not, they just don't see adult education anymore. I mean, we aren't even a line item in the state budget anymore, and it's hard to find us, and they keep putting us in a different place. Like they'll put us with the community colleges sometimes, they'll put us with K-12 other times. And yes, we do need to reach out to legislators. We do need to reach out to Mr. Thurmond.
Seems like the unions in the CTA and the CFT are not really demanding the full funding of public education. at this point. I mean, they're really allowing the butchering at Oakland, where the FCMAT has ordered them to close schools. They're closing schools in the Black and brown community. Black and brown community. And FCMAT was used also, wasn't it used in West Contra Costa County to demand budget cuts? This is what's happening with FCMAT.
They're bringing FCMAT in. I don't think it's come in yet. Actually, FCMAT was brought in to audit the adult school back in, I think, 2014 or 2015. And that didn't help us either.
What did they do?
Well, they did a report. You know, the funny thing I have to say about the FCMAT report, I read it very thoroughly. And what the district did wasn't really implement the FCMAT report. I mean, the FCMAT report, you know, had some stuff in it that I didn't like, obviously, but the district kind of just took it to implement whatever they wanted and said that it was FCMAT. And I would go to FCMAT and it's not in here. Like, they were saying that adult school teachers don't have sick leave. That was one of the things that they started doing after the FCMAT report. And it's in EDCO that we have sick leave. But they were denying people their sick leave. And what was sad about it was, if you already knew, if you'd ever taken sick leave and you knew how to take it, you could take it and you didn't know this was a problem. But it was those people who never ever took a sick day, you know, and all of a sudden some horrible calamity happened to them and they really had to take sick time. And they come to me and say, oh, you know, I've been told that I don't have any sick leave. And I said, that's crazy, you have sick leave. But they were not, they were just being told they didn't have it. And the district was absolutely sure that they did not have it. And I looked in FCMAT and FCMAT said, adult school teachers have sick leave, you know? So yeah, it's hard to say what to blame on FCMAT and what to blame on the district and what they wanted to do. But that's why we have a union. That was kind of the start when I started telling people they had no sick leave. So yeah, in terms of FCMAT, we had to reorganize a lot of things. And well, unfortunately, I'd say the worst thing that happened with FCMAT was the district sort of used to let the adult school be its own sort of world with our own. It was, in some ways, maybe it was a little too much that way. There was no. The problem was, as long as everybody in the adult school was operating in good faith, it worked. But when you got somebody in there who was dishonest, there weren't enough checks on what they were doing. But we then came under the school district that doesn't, I mean, we were under them, but they started to really have a lot, you know, give us, they took over the oversight of the adult school very closely. I guess the thing would be to say they started to kind of micromanage us, and they don't understand us. And so we are always coming into conflict with them.
And we're talking with Kristin Pursley. She's the vice president of the Adult School Teachers United West Contra Costa School District. And also joining us is Ken Ryan, who is the president of the of this union. Ken, you were fired as well. Why don't you talk about that? Was what happened and why you think you were fired by the school district?
Sort of in the dark as to why they would want to fire us, because the thing they're bringing up is we don't have a proper credential for the number of hours we're working, and but instead of working with us to accomplish that, they just fired us. So I'm imagining that they don't like the ideas we bring up that are in disagreement with management decisions in the last 4 years. So the motivations of the people in HR to make us conform to what they think credentialing and hours should be. It was a perfect storm with a principal that we disagreed with, who said, go ahead, go after them. Because we disagreed with the principal about the location of ESL classes, the maintenance of the older adult program. The principal tried to close the older adult program twice, and community came out to school board meetings, and the school board overrode the closure of the older adults program. Similarly, we've been fighting for better COVID when COVID was more extreme. We were fighting for vaccine requirements and spacing requirements because we're adults, we're not kids. And they were running the school based on what the safety precautions for kids were. And we got nowhere, but we kept, publicly talking about it. So those are a few of the things we disagreed on. And the principal did not like to be questioned. I mean, he took things personal that were not personal. We were just talking numbers and public safety, and I think there was a great deal of bad feeling that led to our being let go. Yeah, it was just, to me, it was management bad feeling towards us because the community came out in support of us, which is why we were able to get our jobs back so quickly.
And how long did the termination last?
I got my letter Thursday morning, and Saturday we were reinstated.
So are these people going to be held accountable for this? It seems like it's a union busting action that they took to target the president, yourself, and the vice president, Kristin. Was there any justification when they terminated both of you?
Clerical error.
So that's what they're saying. It was a clerical error that the president and the vice president of the local were terminated.
Yeah.
Nobody else. It was a clerical error. Do you believe that?
Oh, no, not at all. And the sad thing for me about it is there's other people, like people have been trying to get accommodations, online accommodations because of their immunosuppression. And they're treated very badly. I mean, the way we were treated was not unusual. And so we were very lucky that we got a great deal of community support. But the poor individual teachers that get denied an accommodation, they're completely victimized. Yeah, it's pretty abusive. It's abusive. It's not pretty. It's just abuse, and it's power. And the reason we have a union is because of treatment like that. So the same HR department tried to classify this, I forget how many years ago this was, but tried to classify us all as subs and say subs don't get sick leave and take away our sick leave. That's one of the reasons we formed a union. It's like, wait a minute. And another half of the HR put the ed code at us as if that supports their position. And they're consistently misinterpreted, deliberately misinterpreted and misrepresented. It's quite, and I don't know if that's just standard operating procedure to see what, for management, to see what they can get away with. And if they can, great. Because the only time we have to bring in a lawyer to make the same point we've been making, and then they go, oh, okay, you're right. And it's just kind of blows my ancestors were small business owners and bank managers, And it kind of blows my mind that the people I work for now are making all the mistakes you would make if you wanted to create a union. So I just really don't understand what motivates what the thinking of HR is in terms of their treatment of people. And for example, I get fired after working there for almost 30 years in an email. It's just, it's like, what kind of community is this we're creating?
Well, it sounds like they have a union busting agenda, that they would do something like that, target the president and vice president of the local and terminate them with an email and then say it's a clerical error. Are you going to file a charge regardless against them with PERB for illegal action of discrimination?
We haven't talked to our lawyer about that. Prior to being reinstated or having the notice of release withdrawn, we had a whole set of legal steps we were going to take. I don't know what if we are going to have new sets of legal steps to take. But I certainly would like to, because that treatment that we received, other employees received, and they don't have access to the political backup we had access to protect their jobs.
And we're speaking with Ken Ryan. He's president of the Adult School Teachers United, an independent union. And when you bring up the attack on the older adult education program, that was shut down at City College of San Francisco. They closed it down, the entire program, and the Board of Trustees voted for it. And the politicians in San Francisco, all Democrats, refused to demand full funding for adult education program in City of San Francisco. This is a city with over 80 billionaires. Over 80 billionaires are in San Francisco, but they don't have the money for an adult education program. But what you're saying is you were able to save your adult education program. How did you were able to save it?
We would bring, whenever they were gonna close the program down, we would go to the school board meetings and talk and have the students come and talk about, how important this program is and how little it costs, because our older adult program has been really whittled down to where it's only about $30,000 a year. It's basically staffed by teachers who retired and then came back. So, and the costs are very small. We're not paying for space, so we bring that up. And actually, I guess maybe it wasn't last time, but the time before. One of the students was a guy who was a bombardier in World War II, and he actually came in his bombardier's uniform and said, "I'm going to bomb you with the truth." And he said, this is I can't remember, geronticide. This is killing older.
Geronticide.
Yeah, because really, of all the adult school programs, this is the one that's life or death. They're all important, but the isolation that is created when there's no programs for older adults is something that actually eventually kills people. So we have people like that, people who are just excellent spokesmen, and the board would always feel like they wanted to find a way to fund the program, but on the other hand, it's always kind of short term because they've got their financial issues. I mean, part of this problem is the state. The state really did defund older adult programs in adult schools, but they were finding ways to fund it. But now, when they're in financial difficulties, they're once again possibly they're trying to find ways to fund it. We actually think we found a way to get some county money, but that's the story. We would always basically, write letters. I don't know why this didn't happen in other places.
Well, you even have an independent union. You're not affiliated to either the United Teachers of Richmond, which is an OEA local, or AFT 2121, which is a local of the California Federation of Teachers, AFT. Yet you were able to defend that program. I mean, these Democrats who dominate San Francisco, they're Democrats who run the Board of Trustees, they're Democrats who run the city and county of San Francisco, they're Democrats who run the legislature. They have a supermajority, as we discussed earlier. It seems like it's fine for them to murder adults who need the senior adult education program, older adults education program. I mean, what kind of contempt do they have for elderly, the older adults program, and when you have a budget surplus of $97 billion in California, when you have all these billionaires, over 180 billionaires in California, they don't have enough money for an older adults education program? This legislature with this surplus? And where's your assemblyman or senator in West Contra Costa County? Who are they?
Our assembly member is Buffy Wicks, and our senator is Nancy Skinner.
Oh, so this is Nancy Skinner.
Well, I don't know whether we could.
Has she been informed about these attacks on the older adult education program?
No. One of the problems is our professional organization, the California Council of Adult Education, they went along with the cuts to older adults.
On what basis?
They're the main lobbyists for adult education in Sacramento. So when we talk to legislators, they go, "What? Wait a minute. Your professional organization told us they were fine with us making these cuts."
Yeah, they'll always say, "Oh, what does
so that's part of the problem."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
Well, why would they go along with the cuts since they're supposed to represent these programs?
They're more.
Go, Chris. Go, Chris.
Well, I think they felt at the time very under attack. I mean, there was even the possibility that there just wouldn't be adult schools anymore. And they, in their minds, they're like, well, this was a sacrifice we had to make. It was painful for us, but we really, we knew we couldn't save everything. That's how they see it.
This is after 2008. This is all a fault. Still, we're still at half the budget we were before the recession.
So the we is the
adult education as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, you have this massive wealth in California, all these billionaires, and they're saying we adult education programs have to face the cutbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at this point, the wealth in California, massive wealth, and yet it seems like they're saying you're going to continue these stringent attacks and cutbacks on programs which are necessary, life and death programs for older adults.
It's austerity for us, no matter what's going on at the state level, pretty much. And part of it is we're kind of small, we don't raise as much hell as we probably should. And all the, most of the teachers, I mean, thing is, adult education is kind of built on exploitation. I hate to say it, but adult education teachers are in most districts kept to part-time. Even if there could be full-time work, there's kind of a policy of keeping them part-time. And that's kind of what they were using when they tried to, dismiss us. They were like, well, you only work part-time, which was not true, actually. You work less than 60% of a full-time amount, and therefore you are temporary and we can lay you off. And that's not true. We actually both work full-time, but we get less pay than K-12 teachers. We're hourly, we're not salaried. And so we don't get paid for any hours that we work outside of our classroom hours. A lot of adult schools, if they have a separate rate for professional development. So, you know, you get paid a certain rate in the classroom and a lot less if you go to a professional development session. No paid holidays. No, we actually got some paid holidays. That was a big breakthrough in our contract, which has not been signed yet. No paid vacation. So, you know, when there's a vacation, everybody's like, oh, happy vacation. And I finally started saying, it's a layoff for me. It's a layoff. It's not a vacation. And that's the structure that, and it's on our backs that principals have some pretty nice, you know, jobs where they get six-figure salaries. Even the staff who are, you know, we don't begrudge them this, they're Teamsters, but they have paid holidays, they have paid vacations.
They have health benefits.
They have health
I don't have-
benefits. We
yeah.
don't have health benefits, except a few of us. Like
But
me.
the money for the other unions, health benefits comes out of the pot of money for the adult education money in the district. And what's left over goes to pay us, and there's not enough for benefits after other people are paid their benefits.
Yeah, because
And their
basically-
contracts are negotiated without reference to our budget. So
Well,
Yeah,
at one time
we're
you
the
tried to,
exploited teaching the exploited.
the exploited teachers teaching the exploited. At one time you tried to join the UTR. What happened with that?
Well, I mean, yeah, we met with them for about a year. It's not really clear what happened. You know, they made their decision in a meeting that we were not at, an executive board meeting, I guess. And then they didn't tell us for a long time. And finally, I don't know, I kind of collared them and said, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we're sorry, but we decided we don't want to admit you.
So the leadership of the UTR decided they didn't want to admit you to join the union, to be part of the UTR,
The
even
executive,
though you're working for the same district.
right?
Yeah.
The executive board at
We
that time.
one of the things we wanted that I think they objected to is we wanted to be present at negotiations about particulars of our contract that affected us, because the conditions of our job are not the same conditions as K through 12. And one of the problems we face with principals is they're coming from K through 12 and they expect us to be operating like K through 12. So for example, yeah, part of the reason we got laid off is because the K through 12 people can't figure out, or they just don't have any experience with, oh, these are part-time people that are doing at least 2 jobs at different sites, because we're not allowing them to have a full-time job. Yet we're going to make things harder on them by enforcing certification requirements. So in my case, for example, I have a part-time credential, which means I can teach half time. But before I would teach half time at West Contra Costa and then go to the community college and teach half time. And I can teach at the community college with a master's degree, but I can't teach at the adult school with full time with a master's degree. It's that kind of craziness that is being enforced on us if we're not going along with what administration wants to hear.
And
Yeah, I
that was
doubt that our
K9.
credentials would be an issue if they didn't see us as.
So you have a master's and yet you're not able to teach at adult education school?
Well, I can teach half-time because that's the credential I have, but I can't teach full-time at adult ed because I don't have a full-time credential, which I think is all of, well, I don't know how many more classes it is, but the master's degree I have is specifically in teaching English to speakers of other languages. So it's quite, it's just as rigorous as the classes I would need to take to get the full-time credential.
Sounds like they're using the system to manipulate to prevent you getting your compensation
Yeah,
and getting treated properly.
Right.
as a professional, as an educator. I mean, they're
So
manipulating the rules.
they would say, well, if I was in their position, I'd say, no, I'm enforcing the rules the same for everyone. And that would be their position. And I'm saying, well, you're enforcing the rules against someone. So for example, when an adult school teacher goes to teach ESL at the college, at a community college, the community college has a process of equivalency where they take into consideration the teaching experience at the adult school, say if they have a master's degree in public administration, and they're allowed to teach. There's no similar consideration by HR of, oh, this guy's taught at the college and he's got a master's degree. That's good. And that may be a state requirement that they're trapped by. But the reason we got laid off is because, not because we were teaching over half-time, but we were working too much.
Yeah, and it's not really clear that, because we're lead teachers, so we're in the classroom. I'm in the classroom 6 hours a week only. The rest of the time I'm writing curriculum or doing testing or supporting other teachers, or I'm not in the classroom. I'm in the classroom part-time. I have a part-time credential. And the reason actually that I have a part-time credential is at the time when I got my credential, almost every adult school teacher would get a part-time because there was no full-time work. It was sort of crazy that they had both a part-time and a full-time credential, but everybody knew if you're an adult school teacher, you're almost certainly going to be working part-time. But when they hired me for the job I'm in now, which was way back in 2003, they knew what kind of credential I had, and they knew that they were hiring me to work 37.5 hours a week and only be in the classroom part-time. And that didn't seem to be a problem then. And it hasn't been a problem until now. When
we started a union and disagree with the principal, now it's a problem.
Yeah, so it just sort of, and yeah, I'm not clear that I think that they've got anything really to worry about in terms of my credential. But yeah, but it's true also that they don't take into account. I mean, I also have a master's degree. I also have a certificate that I went to school for a year to teach ESL, and none of that is factored in at all. They just look at what kind of credential you have.
So again, I think it's a pretext for union busting and going after the union. Sounds like. I think. If you stand up for your rights, well, we're going to use the rules to try to attack you and discriminate. Now you're going to be going to the school board. Why don't you talk about your action, your press conference that you're having at the school board?
Yeah, we're going to have a press conference and a rally on next Wednesday, June 15th, which is the date of the next school board meeting. It will be at 4:30 in the afternoon, which is about an hour before the school board convenes at Livonia Dijon Middle School at 3400 McDonald. That's where the school board meets. They meet in the multi-purpose room there. And we'll be talking about things like how delayed our contract has been and how obstructionist the district has been, COVID safety, what Kim was talking about, where people haven't been able to get accommodations, even though they have disabilities that involve immunosuppression, which is very dangerous for people to have to be in person if they're immunosuppressed in the middle of a pandemic. The cuts to the ESL program and reassignment of teachers. They've reassigned about a third of the ESL teachers. They gave us a survey saying, what do you want to teach? And then they pretty much ignored what people asked for. So those are needlessly, right. There actually wasn't a need to rearrange the program much at all for this year, but they did a big rearrangement. And actually,
isn't that another union busting tactic? It seems.
Well, it's certainly certainly something that is, I mean, it impacts people's hours, it impacts their working conditions, and they're basically saying, oh, that's not something you can negotiate it. And yes, we can. And wages and working conditions, that's what we're supposed to address.
So you're going to be having a press conference at the before the school board, and your union, I mean, do you have a full-time staff?
We have no staff. We are it.
So your rank and filer is basically fighting this and making a press conference and getting these issues out. I mean, they see these other locals, UTR, AFT 2121, they have full-time staff people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have the money to pay that. We don't have an office. I mean, this is my
Yeah, there's the union office right there.
yeah, well, your office too. And yeah, I kind of say, I tell people we're sort of a kitchen table union. Everybody's doing this stuff in their own house. You know, if we have dues, but it doesn't, we're kind of small and we can't charge a lot of dues because people don't make very much. So, yeah. So
Well, that's maybe an example of what could be done. Here you have a rank and file union with no office, with no staff, but you're making a fight. And some of these other unions feel that they can't even make a fight. They're prostrate before these union busing attacks, unfortunately. And the CFT and the CTA have millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And they could make an effort to join together all the adult education teachers in California who face similar attacks. They could bring together the teachers statewide to demand that this budget surplus, $97 billion, be used to make sure that you have equality for the teachers. You have these programs fully funded. But it seems like they don't want to challenge Gavin Newsom and the state legislature. They're not calling them out. No demands on them statewide.
yeah, well, sometimes it does seem like, although we're very limited by our resources, but in some ways our freedom to act maybe is a little more, I don't know.
Open.
I mean, we actually work with them and they do, you know, support us. UTR has been really supportive of us and Teamsters, and we're trying to work together. I mean, I think that's
part of the reason we got our jobs back is because they were hearing from UTR and the teams. Like, what are you guys doing?
right. And we feel like if we can all be together as these different unions and work together, that will be very transformative for this district. I think, you know, if we can really hang together, and that's one thing that the district is trying to do, is drive wedges between us.
One of the interesting things about being at the table, because we're now a union, is I always thought the bad treatment we received from the district was just because we were small, inconsequential adult ed. And I was amazed to hear, oh, UTR and the Teamsters get treated with just as little respect. Interesting. This is a much bigger problem than I thought existed.
So it's a systemic problem.
Yeah, there's this strange, we can treat you as badly as we can get away with, and you exist as a union to check us, to rein us in, and that's the way the system we're going to exist in. It's the way I'm perceiving it now, and it seems like a crazy way to structure the workplace. It is a crazy way to structure the workplace.
Okay, well, I want to thank both of you. We've been talking with Ken Ryan. He is the president of the Adult School Teachers United, West Contra Costa County School District, and the vice president, Kristin Pursley. And they've been talking about their terminations, illegal terminations by the school district, and the fight to protect their programs, adult education programs and older adults program in the counties. Thanks for joining us on Work Week.
Thank you.
Thank you.